Hello and welcome back to the Pitchside Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSB. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and all the content on the channel. Make sure we have a new content on the channel to follow, of course. Subscribe and follow us on social media on site PSB on Twitter, PitchsidePod on Instagram. Listen on Spotify, Google Podcast or any other platform to our podcast. Welcome to episode 165. Let's start in with some quick transfer news around Europe, of course, and mostly regarding managers. And we start from Italy, as Antonio Conte is officially leaving Inter next season and will no longer be the manager, of course, after financial disputes with the board. A meeting took place yesterday in Milan, of course, and Antonio Conte is no longer the Inter Milan manager. Of course, his demands are really big. I mean, it has been the case with Juventus. He left for financial reasons. He left for financial reasons at Chelsea as well, and also disputes with the board. And this is the third case of that happening with a club that he coaches, of course, and again happening after just winning the league. It's a weird sort of fetish that Conte has for just leaving clubs after winning the leagues. He's going to take a compensation of 7 million euros, and you add that to the 20 million euros that he's already been taken from Chelsea as a compensation for his contract being terminated there, and probably he will be, sitting on the fence a little bit, enjoying his life for a while before making his next managerial move, which is reportedly could be Real Madrid, while of course, Massimiliano Allegri could be heading the other way around and heading to Inter Milan. Inter Milan made contacts with Simone Inzaghi yesterday, but apparently the Lazio board was quick to renew his contract to shield him from any potential destinations where he could go. Of course, I mean, wherever and whoever the manager is going to be coming to Inter Milan is going to come at the hard situation with the club financially hit hard by the pandemic, and it's really going to be a tough break for any new manager that comes to Inter at the moment. Still in Milan, and moving to the other side of the coin, of course, with Donnarumma officially as well leaving AC Milan this season and this summer as a free agent. The negotiations broke down between him and Paolo Maldini, the sporting director at AC Milan. His demands are, to put it prospectively, his agent's main Raiola demands were really huge. He demanded around 12 million euros as a salary, as a yearly salary for Donnarumma, 8 million euros as a sort of a motive for renewing the contract and all of that. Paolo Maldini, of course, wouldn't accept such offer. Donnarumma is already the highest paid goalkeeper in the world, already the highest paid player in AC Milan, so it doesn't really make sense for, again, in this situation with the COVID effects still taking place, really, to pay him such wages. So the Milan board is going to officially let him go this summer, of course, as a free agent. Back to managerial, futures and all of that. Zinedine Zidane is leaving Real Madrid. That is official. It was reported yesterday, of course, that Zinedine Zidane is immediately considering the exit of Real Madrid, of course, and his next managerial move, as you mentioned in previous episodes of the podcast, feel free to check those out, could still be, Juventus or the French national team in the long term, of course. At the moment, it looks like maybe he could be the job, he could take the job of Inter Milan. I mean, it won't surprise me really to do so, but definitely it would be something that Zinedine Zidane would be interested into. Still in Spain, of course, and Ronald Koeman's future is locked and secured, apparently, in Barcelona. More reports are coming out suggesting that he's going to be staying with the club for next season because Laporta basically doesn't have another choice. Ronald Koeman, of course, who's been really slandered this season, particularly losing the league in the last hurdle, really was slandered by the media. The Catalan fans have the perspective that he shouldn't be staying for another season, but Laporta seemingly still believes in him a bit. It depends on the plan that he has in place for next season to make Messi stay, to improve the situation at the club, but for the moment it looks like Ronald Koeman is staying in the Blaugrana and staying in the Camp Nou. Enough of this managerial merry-go-round, and let's get to some proper football now. Congratulations go to Villareal as they defeated Manchester United in the Europa League final in an epic penalty shootout, 11-10, to win the Europa League final, to win their first European trophy, and Unai Emery's fourth Europa League trophy. He's a true specialist now of this competition. His Zinedine Zidane, basically, of the Europa League, basically. That is what Unai Emery is, and a game that was, as epic as the shootout was in the penalties, the game itself wasn't that great. It wasn't a great watch, but obviously it would be made 100,000 times probably better by the crowds, even as scarce as the crowds were. Now around 9,000 people were in Gdansk yesterday, but definitely it gave the feeling of a proper European final, at the very least, unlike last season. United were clearly the favourites, were clearly the better side overall, and that is a really small margin when you look at it. They had like 60% of possession, 40% for Villareal, but in the end it was 2 shots on target to 1, and basically the only shot on target for Villareal was a goal, while United also had a shot on target, a goal and a shot on target as well. Villareal relied mostly on set pieces, and long balls really up front, which of course got them the ball and got them the goal thanks to Gerard Moreno from a very, very bad marking, particularly from Victor Lindelof, who's, I don't know, was really adamant on holding his shirt down for some reason. It would have been a penalty even if he didn't score, Gerard Moreno, but of course, the goal maybe would hurt more. Villareal were dangerous from set pieces, a couple of chances for them, for Pau Torres in particular. To be fair, United had more control in the first half and should have been leading the game at the very least 1-0. And that's not because they were pressing, but because they had control of the game. They were controlling the ball. Villareal was sitting at the back, really decently, defending really well, to be fair. But United, with the quality that they have, they should have really scored at least 1 goal in the first half. The choices for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to start were really wrong, I would say. Rashford, you could see that he's not on 100%. The midfield duo of McTominay and Pogba doesn't give you exactly solidity in the midfield, and you really could see that whenever Villareal broke in through the United defence, you could see that, Pogba and McTominay were not exactly pressing, so that forces the likes of Cavani, Bruno Fernandes, Rashford and Greenwood to always do extra work tracking back. The game, was decent in the first half. Again, it was really, really good in the first half. It had some feel to it, but after Man United's goal, the game really went straight ugly. I didn't really enjoy it in particular, in the 90 minutes at the very least. So many stoppages, so many fouls given. The game was disrupted so much. There wasn't exactly this sustained sort of momentum about it. And with the physical levels dropping, particularly for Real players, they were accepting of their fate, really. They were trying to keep the draw. They tried to keep the result 1-0. They couldn't, so they tried to keep the draw, which they were successful in. And here comes the genius of the managers, I would say, of Unai Emery compared to the outright stupidity of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So Ole Gunnar Solskjaer made his first substitution in the game at the 107th minute. Imagine that, midway through the half-time, or the half-time of extra time, midway through the second half of extra time, while Unai Emery made 5 substitutions during the second half of the proper 90, which gave Villareal all the fresh legs in the world. Actually, they had a better period in the last 20 minutes of the 90 and into the first half of the extra time. They couldn't score, so they sat in the back pretty well, knowing that they still have fresh legs. And of course, we'll go to the penalties and making the playing field pretty much even for the penalty. And whenever they got a chance to go forward, they were really going forward. That's what they were doing, really. Shout outs to Geronimo Rulli, their goalkeeper, who's been a hero for them in the penalties. Scoring the decisive one and also saving one for David De Gea. He has a terrific performance in the whole game, really. Defensively, they were really solid. Pau Torres proved why he's sought after. He's one of the future great defenders in the world. He would be. And from the other side, as I mentioned, the likes of Marcus Rashford putting in a poor performance. Greenwood wasn't exactly there. Bruno Fernandes, captain, but what he did more than screaming. He did nothing more than screaming, I think, at the referee for most times. I mean, Villareal arguably should have been leading in the game, probably, but you know, when United are horrible in set piece defending as they did and as they were, which is one of the consistent things about them this season, really, the fact that they're bad at set piece defending, it's no surprise that they suck at that. So when you have a team that doesn't defend set pieces really well, that is what you end up with, conceding a goal and chasing the game for the most part. You know, again, a lot of players were uninspiring. You know, again, Rashford. Performance was pretty much horrible. It could be pointed out that it was horrible. You know, Greenwood again wasn't exactly alive. Bruno Fernandes didn't do much. I mean, didn't service. I mean, I would have blamed Cavani, but he's a striker and he should be serviced well, and he wasn't serviced well. Neither by the fullbacks or by the playmaker and the wingers behind him or the rest of the team anyway. So got to the extra time, get to the penalties, and the playing field was pretty much even. 50-50 between the two sides. It comes down to pretty much sheer luck and the goalkeeper's you know, skills. And here's another mistake that you know, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer made. Why are you keeping David De Gea when you know that Dean Henderson is better goalkeeper in terms of penalties, and you know that he's been, you know, and if you want to make him his first choice, then show him that you are his first choice, you are his first choice, or you know, by playing a European final, a final that would get him a trophy that would have been, I mean, it would have been unimportant in the in grand scheme of things because they qualified the Champions League already, but it would have been important morally. It would have been a great trophy to rag about at the very least, at least equal the biggest achievement of United in the last 5-6 years or so, winning that trophy and being second on the table. So he keeps David De Gea on, relies on him, and of course that went well as you expected. That went really bad, that is, with De Gea conceding 11 penalties, and not just conceding 11 penalties, like he didn't even try to save some of them. Like most of the penalties, he went the other side, or you know, didn't exactly try to follow those penalties. And in particular, I mean, by the way, those were some good penalties taken. I mean, this was some quality penalty taken, by the way, on display. Like not just any run-of-the-mill kind of you know, shabby penalties. This was some experience penalty taken. I like the Pau Torres penalty in particular. It was like smarmy in the top left corner. Then you have, of course, the biggest, I would say, penalty of the bunch is the goalkeeper penalty. The Geronimo Rulli penalty from Villareal was also tremendous as well. I mean, that's not a penalty that the goalkeeper takes. That's pretty much an experienced you know, outfield player taking a penalty like that. And of course, when it came down to the wire, David De Gea let Manchester United down, missed the penalty, and gave the victory to Villareal. Well deserved again over the course of the game. Solskjaer only blames himself for this sort of choice, starting with the wrong lineup, not bringing Fred, not starting with Fred, while starting with McTominay and Pogba, which doesn't give you any sort of solidity whatsoever in the midfield. Villareal deservedly winners of their first European trophy, and this trophy makes a difference between them playing in the UEFA Conference League next season and playing in the Champions League now that they won it and they actually enter the Champions League you know, group stage draw as top. They will be top of their group because they will be put in pot first since they are the Europa League champions while they're 7th in La Liga. I mean, that is just unbelievable. They're going to be in the same sort of vain category as Atletico Madrid, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, and you know, and Lille. So, and Manchester City is going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. Whatever is going to happen, of course, in the next season for them, Unai Emery proves he is the specialist of the Europa League and takes himself to the 4th Europa League trophy, making himself the coach with the more European trophies in his coaching career. Of course, surpassing Giovanni Trapattoni and of course, you know, equaling, I should say, you know, surpassing Trapattoni and Zidane as well, with 4 European trophies to his name, albeit the Europa League, but still an achievement is an achievement. Congratulations, Villareal. Congratulations, Unai Emery. It was a really good evening in Gdansk for Villareal. Moving on to lighter subjects now, and let's get back on the retrospective road Talking about the season, of course, the 2021 season in retrospective, and we get to the Bundesliga now, the penultimate station in our reviews. Of course, tomorrow is going to be the Premier League, the finale of these sort of retrospective reviews, of course, and it's going to be joined by the Champions League preview. Definitely, it's going to, all are going to link together, hopefully, in the last weekend preview of the season for me. Let's start, of course, on the champions as usual for the Bundesliga, and we'll start from Bayern Munich, who won the 9th trophy in a row in Germany, which is maybe disappointing from a neutral point of view. As a fan of the Bundesliga, maybe you'd be disappointed. As a fan of the other clubs in the Bundesliga, you'd be disappointed. But as a fan of Bayern, you'd only have to accept it, really. You can only accept it. Even if maybe a part of you would think that that's too easy, that is, hurting the reputation of Bayern Munich, really, Farmers League and all of that. But anyway, let's remind people the general sort of big, sort of details from the Bundesliga. Bayern are the champions with 78 points. RB Leipzig, Dortmund and Wolfsburg are the top 4. Frankfurt and Leverkusen are going to be in the Europa League, and Union Berlin are going to be in the UEFA Conference League, while in the relegation, Bremen and Schalke officially relegated, and FC Köln are playing in the relegation playoffs. Of course, they lost yesterday, to Holstein Kiel 1-0 at home in the in the first of the 2 matches they're going to be playing. Of course, they have the second leg of the relegation playoffs that will take place on Saturday. Speaking of Bayern again, they were champions. Again, a generally disappointing season for them, considering the high standards they set. Last season was sextuple and all. They were generally underperforming in certain games as the season went on, despite the great start that they had. Injuries coming at the wrong moment. Before the Champions League tie with Paris Saint-Germain would have made so much difference. I mean, missing the likes of Lewandowski, Goretzka, Serge Gnabry, not being available, of course. But Lewandowski, I think, was the biggest miss of that game in particular, because he would have scored a great bunch of goals. He would have probably been the historic goal scorer of the Champions League if he played particularly in that first leg in Germany. But again, you don't really get what you always want. Bayern Munich had a really tough spell, I would say, after that exit against Holstein Kiel and all the way into that second half of the season and into that game against PSG. It was a pretty tough spell. They would drop in some seriously bad points, and at certain points they weren't performing as they should have been. The recruit as well for Bayern were not exactly having their best of a season. They weren't exactly putting the highest performance that they can, I think, except Leroy Sané, who's started to improve and started getting better as the season drew closer to its end, and to a lesser degree, Choupo-Moting. I mean, that's what you expect from him. He really did his part, to be fair. I mean, scoring against PSG back and forth, home and away, is a pretty good achievement, pretty good feat for him, but definitely he did well. But the other signings, Bouna Sarr was probably the worst of the bunch. Douglas Costa was here and there, he's not the same anymore. And then you have, of course, Mark Roca, who's been injured more than anything, and he still doesn't have his place. Thiago Dantas didn't appear a lot, he only had like 1 appearance in the Bundesliga, and that's about it. So from a Bayern Munich perspective, it was a generally underperforming season, and you add to that, of course, the Holstein Kiel exit in the cup, and you end up with an average season for Bayern, probably with Lewandowski being the greatest goal scorer in a single season in the Bundesliga history, with 41 goals, breaking Gerd Müller's situation. Definitely will be the highlights of the season. As far as the lowlights of the season, there's a lot of them, to be fair. There's Flick Salihamidzic situation, the whole deal with them being on and off, disputing whatever, leading to Flick leaving. After that, the David Alaba saga. I mean, yes, now he's leaving and it's going to be tears of joy and all of that, but it was a pretty good saga within the board of Bayern and the players. Well, it took a while, and David Alaba was playing a good game, really, with the board, trying to take things as long as possible. In the end, he got what he wanted. He's going to leave Bayern Munich this season, but he's going to leave at least with a good legacy alongside Jerome Boateng, Javi Martinez and Hansi Flick. Even as short of a legacy as he has, it's a big one, bringing the sextuple to Bayern and putting them into a different pedestal, really, in world football, alongside Barcelona's from 2009, with the first side to win a sextuple in the history of football. The exit really of Boateng, Martinez, Alaba and Flick as well I mean, some of them is going to be replaced by the comings of Nagelsmann, Upamecano. We will see what the transfer market is going to be like for Bayern. They're not the kind of team that likes to spend money, but we'll see what will happen for them. Overall, it's a season to forget for the champions, relatively to the standards of last season, obviously. And talking about the champions, let's talk about their closest challengers in RB Leipzig. It was a good season for them, another good season for them, equaling their best finish in the Bundesliga table, being second back in 2016-17. They were so close for Bayern for the most part, but the ending they had to the season was pretty bad, losing the cup final, middling performances towards the end of the campaign, and obviously losing Nagelsmann in campaign and Upamecano towards the end of the campaign to Bayern, plus Konaté's imminent exit really could put a lot of work on whoever will be the next coach for RB Leipzig. Certainly defensively they improved, they're one of the best defences in the Bundesliga, the best defence in the Bundesliga, by the way, one of the best in Europe. Definitely, a side that will be a consistent, apparently, in the Champions League for the next foreseeable future, really for the next maybe 3-4 years, unless the new manager doesn't really deal with things really well and maybe takes the team to a downward spiral, which I suspect really, because they still have a good pool of talent to pick from and to make a good side that can still be second on the table, that can still be close to Bayern, and that can still end up being in the top 4 positions. Speaking of the top 4 position, and a team that just sneaked in the last fixtures, of course, is Borussia Dortmund. Overall, I would say it was a middling season, I think, for them, marred by the sacking of Lucien Favre in the midway through, and the run that they had throughout the middle of the season, where top 4 was in serious jeopardy. But again, all credit to Edin Terzic, an interim coach who took the club at a hard situation and managed to steer the ship in the right way. He got 8 wins in a row in the last 8 and clinched the 3rd place and winning the DFB Pokal to end the season in a really uplifting way comparatively to what Dortmund were for the most part. They had the loss of 5-1 to Stuttgart. I mean, some of the results were awful that Dortmund had, losing to Köln at home 2-1. I mean, their form was dipping in and out, losing to Leverkusen as well, losing to Frankfurt at home as well, losing to Leverkusen as well. It definitely was, to Gladbach away from home, it definitely was a middling season, but again, the way it ended, getting 3rd spot, winning the cup final, it will probably uplift Dortmund, motivate them a lot, motivate them for the next season, with some players probably more likely to stay. I'm looking at you, Erling Haaland here, with them playing Champions League football next season. So overall, I mean, I would rate this as a good season for Borussia Dortmund, and definitely, a season where generally they should have improved on a lot, because they really need to move up the table, they need to move up the card, they need to restore their position as like the closest thing that could be to a challenger for Bayern Munich's Bundesliga domination. Elsewhere in the Bundesliga, of course, I would say the disappointments of the season, in my opinion, were Borussia Mönchengladbach and Bayer Leverkusen. Borussia Mönchengladbach, far from their best since the start of the season at the very least, so that's not a surprise. Well, and with Marco Rose leaving to Dortmund, that even cast more shadows on their season and really left them in an unwanted situation. Well, Bayer Leverkusen, on the other hand, they also were good at the start of the season. They were top of the table by Christmas, then they faded away. They simply faded away at the second half of the season. Peter Bosz was sacked. I mean, at least Hannes Wolf did a good job in the second half of the season, keeping Bayer Leverkusen in and around the European places and nicking in a 6th place. Eintracht Frankfurt, before them, of course, could have gotten to the top 4, but definitely dropping as well in the last fixtures of the season. Considering the financial situations that Eintracht Frankfurt found themselves into, that's quite the result really ending up in the top 5 and being in a European spot. The good surprise of the season are 2, obviously, Union Berlin playing in the Conference League, and Wolfsburg, with Oliver Glasner being one of the best defences in the Bundesliga and also returning to the Champions League. Elsewhere, it was pretty shout out to Mainz, I would say, for having one of the best second halves of the season, getting 27 points out of the whole second half of the season, out of the whole 47, and that is really quite the transformation that they had since having like 4 or 5 points with Schalke in like the 8th or 7th week of the season. Hoffenheim as well were pretty disappointing side this season. They weren't exactly at their best, and then you have, of course, the bottom 3, which involved involve two of the most historic sides in German football, Werder Bremen and Schalke 04. Of course, I hope that is quick return for them to the Bundesliga, because at a certain point of the history they were a dominant force in the Bundesliga. Werder Bremen certainly were Champions League material back in the day. Of course, the big stats from the Bundesliga, the goals. Obviously, Robert Lewandowski's top goal scorer, 41 goals. Andre Silva, 28. At second, Erling Braut Haaland, 27. Kramaric, 20. And Wout Weghorst, 20. Of course, team of the season, I think I would go for Colin Castells, Willi Orban from Leipzig, Mats Hummels, Edmund Tapsoba from Bayer Leverkusen had a decent season, Rafael Guerreiro, one of the best left backs in the world, I would say at the moment, as a wing back. Jadon Sancho deserves a place. Joshua Kimmich from Bayern, who's still performing really well. Maximilian Arnold from Wolfsburg, who really had a good season. Thomas Müller, and of course up front you're putting Lewandowski and Erling Braut Haaland. That's it for me for this episode, for the review of the Bundesliga and all of that. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast, all the other content on the channel, including of course the best of European players, of course Europe's best 11, you can check that out. Follow us on social media site, PS Beyond Whatever is Said Pod on Instagram, listen to this on Spotify, Good Podcast or any other platform, and until tomorrow's episode, the weekend preview of course, which is the last one with a Champions League preview and all of that, I will see you soon. Goodbye.